Now here we go. Oops. Okay, so this is the Shaolin Records podcast, and I'm now going to fire up Logic. And so the first time I've been doing this today, it's the first time I've ever done a video plus this, and the first time I've done podcasts in Logic. So anyway, what I got to do is I've opened the project here. Now, what I got to do is I've got to hit the I button up here in the left corner for the inputs. And when I look at, I have to highlight the channel that I'm going to select, that I'm going to use. And there we go. I'm going to use this for the host, Richard Del Conner story. I'm going to hit the input button, go to the input bus. I'm on input 1. And if I click the I in that channel, I can actually see it now before because I'm on a audio thing, not a digital thing. And now it's automatically the R gets fired up because I've selected that track. I hit the red button up there and whammo, I'm recording now. So yeah, this is the beginning of the audio podcast right there. And this is 008 of the Shaolin Records podcast. And I'm going to basically keep you informed now of what I'm doing in terms of learning. Remember, I started as a recording engineer in 1974. In 1974, I was a professional audio engineer in a 4-track studio. And I was actually working also as an assistant for a jingle writer, David Shields, in San Diego. And he was producing stuff in a 16-track studio, which is where I had actually gone to the RIAA classes and learned how to be a recording engineer. And I studied a book and passed a test and got to learn everything in 16-track on a Stevens 16-track recorder at Studio West in San Diego. And so and then I got the job at Bonita and worked there for a year and a half or so. I don't know, almost 2 years, I'm not sure. And I was basically producing radio commercials, really budget jingles. And then people would come in and do demo projects and even a couple of albums, mariachi records, some country records, and I'd produce or engineer them depending on whether the owner of the studio just wanted me for an engineer and he'd produce. But usually he just let me take over after a while because he only charged like $25 an hour. And he was only paying me 10 or 15 an hour. So basically he was happy just let me just take 15 an hour and get paid the rest for doing nothing. Because he got to where I realized I could do it without him. So I guess he wasn't that impassioned about it. So anyway, that was Dwight Squibb. And so he was the owner of the studio. So anyway, I just ended up taking him over. And one of the sessions I did was for the first edition, which is such an ironic story because one of the people who taught me guitar was Ryans. What was his first name? I don't know why. Skip Ryans was his dad. Leslie Ryans was his sister. Anyway, he came in and wasn't Rick Ryan. But anyway, he came in and he was he was the guitarist for the first edition. And he had the bass player, Shane, played a stand-up bass a lot of the time, I guess, back then. They were coming out of the folk period. Kenny Rogers in the first edition. And so anyway, he came in there to do a demo. In fact, it was right after they'd done the song Ruby. And these guys had done a couple of songs that they wanted to be on the next album. One of them was called Ruby 2 or something. It was like another version of the Ruby song. And so I produced and engineered those songs for them. And I really thought, hey, hire me for the first edition. And so I played slide and slide guitar on one song. And then Saturday Night was something. It was one song. And then the other one was Ruby something. And I played slide guitar on one song and electric guitar on the other one with my ES335. And I did a pretty decent job. Well, maybe a really good job. But I didn't get it. They didn't hire me. But anyway, they had plenty of guitar players. But anyway, but I produced and recorded those songs, but it was ironic because Ryan's, God, I can't think of his name. He was one of the people who taught me how to play guitar. He taught me like my first couple of chords. There was like a couple of neighbors when I was 12 years old, and I started playing guitar. And he showed me like the D chord and the G and the C. And then another neighbor taught me the E and the A. And, then I was pretty well going. And then, then pretty soon I moved up to bar chords and I was performing. I was playing songs by the Beatles and the Stones and the Animals. So yeah, I was performing. I don't think I performed when I was 12. I think I was 13 by the time I got good enough. And I got an electric guitar because my parents wouldn't get me a guitar. I was a trombone player up to that time, and so my parents, I gave my trombone to my parents and said, okay, I'm not going to play trombone anymore. I'm just going to play guitar. I need an electric guitar. I had this like $12 Stella piece of, anyway. I put stickers all up and down it, so I know where the things were, the F sharp, G sharp, A, and I had all these little stickers on it. I think it was black and red, so then on the next string, I'd know it was A sharp, B, C, so anyway, that's how I kind of like learned how I way around the guitar, that first little Stella guitar. But it was, anyway, it was good enough to learn. But then I needed an electric guitar, and my parents wouldn't buy me a guitar that was just, even though I gave them my trombone. I mean, I should have just hitchhiked to the music store and traded it in for a guitar if I would have known they were going to pull that stunt on me. But anyway, I had to go get a paper route and save up enough money to make a down payment, on a guitar, and then, which took me a couple months. Well, it took me a month to get the job, and then I had to do the papers for a month, and then I got paid, and I got $50. Then I went right to the guitar. I went right there within a month. Yeah, with that $50, made a down payment on like $180, $175 plus tax, was like $185, I think, for red Fender Mustang, and then I made payments on it each month until I paid it off, and yeah, so that's how I got my first guitar when I was barely 13. I think maybe I was 12. Might have even still been 12. But anyway, I don't remember exactly. But it was that first year that I was in the 7th grade, because I was performing in the 7th grade and doing after school concerts. I was playing House of the Rising Sun and you say hello and I say goodbye, goodbye, goodbye. I remember that was one song we were playing. But anyway, so how'd I get off on that tangent? But anyway, going back to where I am. Oh, I was just saying how I became an engineer was at Bonita Studios. And so that was in 74. So 10 years later. And I'd already been to Newfoundland, where I'd played in several bands and been on television there, and even a feature film. Well, not a feature film, but somebody made a college graduation project out of me. He said he wanted to shoot me, and he shot me like an hour thing of me just performing on the ocean, overlooking the ocean. He just shot me. I just kept playing, just keep playing. So I just kept playing. He kept wandering around and shooting me from different angles, and climbed down to the cliff and shot me from the bushes and long shots. So I don't even know. He may have not even been able to record my vocal or music much, and probably maybe put other music underneath me, so he could never hear what I was playing. But that was my first movie. Performing away, and that was me. He just made a whole movie of me performing for an hour. That was when I was 16 years old. Yeah, I was 16, and then I turned 17 after that. So yeah, I was still 16 when I made my first movie. So, albeit a school movie, a student project movie. But anyway, but I was on television a couple of times that year also. And where was I? Okay, so I became an engineer in 74, a professional engineer. So I was working, and then the owner of the studio owned this big, beautiful A-frame next to the studio. So I lived in the studio and the house, and then I had the keys to the studio, so I'd go over there every single night. And I lived in that studio. I mean, I was recording every night and stuff, and recorded a whole album that year. I originally called it The Thrush. And then a couple of people said, oh, the thrush is some sort of disease. I thought, no, I kind of took the thrill out of that. And so I had an album cover that I'd drawn with this guitar neck and a thrush, a bird. I was probably a towhee, actually, which was one of my favorite birds back then. Have a red butt. Towhee, they're brown. And anyway, with this bird sitting on the neck of the guitar, and that was going to be the album cover. But then I decided to call it Bonita from that point on, because it was recorded at Bonita Studios. So that was my first album, and I recorded that in... what was that, 74 and 75, because I was 20 and turned 21, so 74 and 75. So that was when I recorded my first album. For me, I'd recorded a couple other people's albums, but that was my first album. So I've been anyway, the point being is I've been a recording engineer for a long time, and working in 4-track studios, 8-track, 16, and then I moved up to 24, and then I was in the Beach Boys studio in Santa Monica, and then I got hired by the Village Recorder, and so then I'd get to record there when, Frank Zappa would leave, I'd be in his room. I didn't ever record in the other room where Fleetwood Mac recorded the Tusk album. They were there a whole entire year, and they just kept all their equipment set up all the time, so I never got into that room. But I recorded in studio. If that was Studio A, I was in Studio B, and there was a little teeny studio up there that used a lot for just voiceovers and stuff, but I even recorded in that one, Studio C. So I recorded in B and C. at the Village Recorder. And then I recorded at Sound Labs and Sound Castle and MCA, Whitney, and Capitol Records. I recorded in Capitol Records, a big room down there we use for orchestras and stuff. And so yeah, I recorded in all kinds of different rooms. Being in, I usually tried to bring an engineer, because I wanted to perform. When I'm performing, I don't want to be an engineer, which was a hassle of being. When I was at Bonita, that first album, I had to be the engineer, get everything running, and then run into the other room and record, and then run back. And that was after that, I said, man, I just want to be a record producer and get an engineer. So I was pretty much a record producer after that, and tried not to be an engineer, but I still was. And I do a lot of the mixing and help out a lot, but I really just wanted to be a record producer. So anyway, I'm back to being an engineer now because I'm having to do everything myself again. So I've been learning Adobe Audition the last year, and it's very much like Pro Tools. But unfortunately, I realized I couldn't use it for what I want. And what I want is my goal for the last 10 years. I keep telling everybody my next instrument's going to be the orchestra. I want to learn how to play the orchestra. And everybody goes, well, yeah, sure. Nobody believes me. So then I finally realized that all the soundtracks and the albums and the movie soundtracks that are made these days are all made with Kontakt software. And then they either use Cubase or Logic. I think those are the two main ones, because they're called DAWs, Digital Audio Workstations, and DAW. And so anyway, I couldn't in Audition or Pro Tools, do all the stuff I wanted to do to make soundtracks for movies, which is playing an orchestra in the computer. They sample, they make the string play every single note, then they record the next note, the next note, and then you got all these sample notes, and then you put the notes together, and they play them long and slow and hard and fast and pluck, and it's a lot of hassle, and then you use the keyboard, which I've got now, which I haven't had for since I was a little kid. Well, that's not entirely true. I had that anyway. I had a Vox Jaguar organ, but it was out of tune. It was like tuned to the anyway. So I had that organ, but that was broken for some years, and finally I sold that. And then I got a Roland SH7, and I used that on the first album. Only one album was the first American Zen album. That synthesizer you hear is that synthesizer, the SH7. And I played with it a little bit, and I mainly got it for a bass. I got it with a Yamaha piano back in 1979. And so I got the Roland SH7 as a bass, because you could make really nice bass sounds on it, and then I could play the piano. But I didn't like the piano. The piano, it was horrible. I just really didn't like it, that Yamaha electric piano they had back then. And so I didn't end up playing piano, and I hardly used the synthesizer. It sat in the case for 10 years until I used that American Zen album. I just was uninspired to play those keyboards. They couldn't do what I wanted to do. And so now I finally got this. This is not really the controller I need, because it doesn't have the wheels, you can use to actually use as a volume pedal. A lot of these synthesizer keyboards, they have modulators and things on them. This is just an electric. It's a excellent piano. It's a Yamaha piano again. But I went around and checked them out. This is the P125. It's the cheapest, really nice piano you can get that feels like a piano. Why I didn't like that other electric piano I had from Yamaha. This one feels like a piano. It has what's called weighted keys. They really feel like you're moving those hammers, which is what a piano does. You press you press these little white things or black things down, and that makes they're hooked up to a lever that makes this arm move, and then they got all these strings, which is really a harp. A piano is really a harp that you're playing in a percussion manner. Instead of plucking the harp strings, you're actually hammering them with these little hammers. And so that's what you do when you play this. It's got to move that hammer. So that's why it's weighted. You can feel that leverage of pushing that hammer in. And this keyboard is made also so when you hit it harder, it makes it hit harder. In other words, it actually makes it sound different than if you do it gentle and you do it harder. It makes a different sound. So that's why I really like this piano. I'm very happy with it. It's what I need. It's good enough for me right now as a beginning piano player. And it turns out it works when I got it, I didn't realize I was going to be using it as a computer controller. I still didn't realize I was going to be able to have an orchestra in my computer. And so that's what I've got now, okay, so here's what I'm doing, and I'm going to keep you posted as I'm making my very first album, my very first record, who's been making records since 1974. I'm making my very first record in the digital world. This is it, my very first one. All the records that I've made before, I was using Pro Tools, but I was playing all the instruments. And my goal was always to play the instrument from the beginning to the end. If you hear a song like on the first American Zen album, All Screwed Up, that's one guitar track, and it's a rhythm guitar track, and then it goes right into the solo, and then I go right back to the rhythm. I'm not even overdubbing solos, And so my albums for some years there were just trying to make really great live performances, to all the way from the beginning to the end. So they were like live concerts recorded. And so that's been my concept my whole life, is to be a performer. And so this is now the first time that I'm actually piecing together the notes piece by piece by piece by piece. And so this is a whole new experience for me. And I was working, when I released the last American Zen album, I was working in a studio. I mixed it at a studio. It was Shaka Khan's studio, and she sold it to this guy who was one of my kung fu students. And he was producing rap music, and that was it. I mean, that was all that came in there, was rap. And I would come in there, and I was able to finish mixing my record, just what limited time I had there, by going in there and closing up the studio, because he just had a kid. And so he said, well, I want to be able to go home at 9 o'clock, and so you stay there from 9 till 2 in the morning, when the bands leave. And so I would lock up the studio every night for him. And during that time, if there was a studio open, I'd go in there and do some recording. And then if they needed me for something, I'd go. But they didn't ever really need me for anything. I mean, they'd bring in their piles of weed and liquor and girls, and they didn't want me around. So I just had to lock up the place when they were done. And so anyway, I was able to get enough studio time to mix that album. But he was having financial troubles, and not, because a lot of these rap artists were realizing, hey, we don't need to go there, we can do it on our computers. And so he was losing his own customers to them kind of recording and engineering themselves. And so and I didn't really finish that album. The End of the Line album by American Zen is like 3/4 mixed, half, a little more than half maybe, because he had, as he said, I can't keep the lights on. And so he said, hey, you can't even borrow the studio because I can't pay the electric bill this month. That was it. So I just cut the cord and said, okay, this is the songs as they are, which is like, they start really good, they're mixed pretty good in the beginning, and then by the last couple of songs are like, wow, these mixed songs are just a rough cuts, and that's it. And so that's the way that was, because I was mixing the album from the beginning to the end of the album. And so that album's really unfinished, but that was as far as I could get with what I had available to me. Because I couldn't pay for studio time. So like I said, I was working it off, and I lost that opportunity. But anyway, so that's where my last studio thing, and then recording in my car, for half a dozen years, being a nomadic Shaolin monk. And so anyway, I've got my studio now. I've got an iMac. I've got the P125. And now, so what am I doing? What am I doing? And I'm going to I'll keep you posted on this, because it's a learning experience, and I'll share this with you. And as soon as I learn how to share my screen, I'll show you all these things, because I've been watching hours and hours of these videos, and then I come in here and it's not really working for me. They're not really the way I like to learn. I teach Kung Fu, Shaolin Kung Fu, for 35 years now. And so I'm really good at kind of like understanding what a person needs to know and the progression of information. So eventually I'll be able to, I think, make much better. In fact, it almost seems like they're holding out a lot of information and not really, they're just kids. Most of these people making these videos, they're just young kids. And they don't really know how to be a teacher. Being a teacher is a lot different than just being a doer, when I learned Kung Fu, I didn't consider myself a Kung Fu master, even though I started in 1980 until 1994. That was when I finally realized, man, I'm definitely a Kung Fu master now. But I had been teaching as a hobby for about 4 or 5 years, but still not a master. And then I taught professionally for about another 4 years. And then I realized, okay, I can really teach Kung Fu. And then I consider myself a master. So it's a long process. It took me, like I said, even though I'd been doing it for a dozen years, it took me several years of learning how to teach Kung Fu. And Kung Fu is maybe less complicated than this. So anyway, I'll share with you. I think I'll be able to be a better teacher at how they do this than a lot of these kids are that I've been learning from. And thank you, all you kids who've been showing me your stuff. I appreciate that. I've said likes and, subscribe to a lot of these channels. But anyway, I'm into the just doing procedures, and then looking at the help and clicking up here because I've been trying to find it on their videos and not really getting it. And so I'm figuring it out. And just by doing it, every time I record a song, I always learn something new and figure something out. So that's where I'm at. And so I don't really want to teach you yet, but I'll keep you posted on how I'm doing and kind of share my progress here. So what I'm doing right now with this podcast is I'm actually not working in Audition now because I want to be in the digital world so I can do all the orchestrations. I'm using Logic Pro X. Okay, so I'm using Logic Pro, and I got the new Air, this thing, the M Audio Air. Is there a picture of it in here? Because I was trying to figure out what do I do for a mixer board or whatever. But because I only have a couple of inputs that I need, because I'm not recording whole drum sets or bands or anything. Aren't any really good pictures in here. Here's the top and back of it. So I got this one, which I thought was definitely enough for what I'd need. So if I did get a chance to record, I guess I could record 6 or 8 tracks at a time, which is, to me, the most I've been able to accomplish this whole century. Before, when I was using Pro Tools, I had the M box, which was just 2 inputs, stereo inputs. But now I got 4 inputs on this thing, so that's awesome. I'm back to a 4-track. That's what I had when I was at Bonita Sound, and I was able to create incredible stuff with that, and plus another extra couple of tracks supposedly on here. So it's 6 or 8 tracks. I mean, what do they call it? Well, anyway, this is this model, and so they make smaller models with only two ends, and that might be good enough for you. But like I said, I've got everything I need. This will do me for quite some time, until I actually start recording entire groups or bands. This is good enough for me. This mixer I got over here, blinking away. And I'm really excited about it. So I got the highest quality input. So this microphone I've been using since when? Early 80s? I have to think about it for a second. I love this. I have to look at ATM 414 or something. I like it a little better than the Shure SM58s, which is this is the competitor. This is just a little bit better. I've had the SM58 also, and girlfriend took it on the road and lost it. Never got me another one. So, but I always like this a little bit better than the SM58. And then for headphones, I've used all kinds of different headphones over the years, Sennheisers and stuff like this. But this century, I stumbled on these, and I wore them out, man. I mean, I sweated them, and they just rotted out, just the last 10 years. So I got a brand new pair of these. And these are the AKG brand, and they're the K240s, and I really like them. They're really comfortable. I can wear them for long periods of time. I got these other ones, which I set up my audiobook studio in the other closet because it's totally soundproof. I can close that thing up and hear my heart beating. It's really quiet in there, and in that one, I got these other closed ear ones that go over your ears, and they're really uncomfortable. And I, wear those for an hour, and my ears are sore and uncomfortable, but they don't leak anything. These have a little bit more leakage, but I'm not as concerned about this because I'm recording digitally, and it can't hear anything anyway. In fact, even now, I'm talking, and I can hear myself in the headphones, but they're still not that loud. You still can't really hear them. So they're not really a problem. So these are much more comfortable, like I said, and they leak a little bit of sound, but no problem. So I like those. And I got this microphone. I'm plugged into my new Air, whatever you call that thing. What is it? The Air 19214. So that model. But this is the biggest one they made. So I kind of maxed out on this. I had to save up for a couple of months on this to get that one. But I thought, okay, I'm really tired of always shortcutting myself being cheap. So I've been trying to get the best that I can. This piano was the best cheap piano I could get. I mean, then I would go up another $350 and get this Korg that I really liked. If I was going to get the next level of piano, but I just couldn't afford that. And I'm happy with this. In fact, I'm not even using the sounds in this. The Korg just has a little bit better, just a hair better piano sound. But I'm going to be using all the sounds that are in my computer, so it doesn't even matter. So this guy's really good, and I'm using it as my MIDI controller. So I've got that coming out, and I've had to figure all that out. I looked online. I could not find anybody who would explain it to me. And what I had to do is, because I'm not coming out from this into a MIDI controller, there is a MIDI out, I think, on the back of this thing, but I don't even have a MIDI cable. I've never used MIDI, ever. None whatsoever. I was always kind of thinking MIDI people are cheaters. They're not really, they don't know how to play music. so I never wanted to even get a MIDI player or controller or anything, samples or drum sample. But anyway, I'm just using the USB out, and I'm using the USB out of my P125 Yamaha, and then I actually have an extension cord on it because it wasn't long enough to make it all the way to my computer. When I put it over here to the side, I can, if I move the thing here, there you can see my keyboard down there. See, right behind me. Okay, so yeah, that's my P125. But anyway, I'm just using it as a controller, and when you assign it, when you do it, and this caused me an hour or two of trepidation trying to figure this out, looking online for the answer, and just had to stumble on it. It asks if you want to use this thing as the controller, and I say sure. And so when I use this as a controller, it hears the music coming out of it. And I was thinking, hold it. I can hear the music in the computer, but I can hear the piano. This is driving me nuts. This isn't working. I don't want to hear this thing. I just want it to controller. So it turns out if you just plug it in, it'll recognize it somehow. I didn't figure out why it does or how it does, but it's not actually specified anywhere in my stuff here. But when I go into my sound thing, and it's just, I'm using that 192 as the in and out, and this thing is not even a controller, but somehow it is working as a controller. It can still hear it or sense it, and so I'm just, like I said. So I had to not use that when I specified it. I'll show you if I could bring up all my stuff. I share my screens with you, learn how to record that. I'll start sharing that and show you how to do it. But anyway, I figured it out, and I can record samples. So I'm halfway through recording this my new album, which I recorded in my car, did all the guitars and singing in my car. And so now I'm adding the trombones to it. And as soon as I'm done with all the trombones, I might add just a couple more things. And maybe some flute, but I already recorded the flute in my car also. So actually, I didn't record my flute in my car. I went to a friend of mine's house and recorded the flute. And one of the guitar tracks I used his apartment too. I took my amplifier and took one mic and put away at the other end of his apartment and one really close to the amplifier, and that's how I recorded some of the guitar tracks on this record. So, but the other guitar tracks all recorded in my car, and the bass track was recorded in my car. But I recorded my flute in his hallway. So I was playing in his hallway because his microphone would only go so far. He didn't have an extension cable or something that when I went to record it. And so I had to just be in the hallway and playing my flute and plugged into his little Focusrite, which he had plugged into his iMac. And that's how I recorded the flutes on this album. So anyway, that's what I'm doing in this album, but I'm going to keep you posted on using this DAW and Kontakt software. So now in order to record the digital software, the samples of the orchestras and the instruments. In fact, I'm not even using orchestras. Most people just cheat and they get these orchestras and they record all these instruments just playing all at the same time. And you can just like playing chords. But anyway, you play a note and you hear the woodwinds, the brass, and the violins all playing that note at the same time. And you do a chord and it sounds really beautiful. It sounds like an orchestra. But I didn't want an orchestra in my album because what the heck would I be doing with an orchestra? I don't see it in my reality. My reality is not to have an orchestra behind me. Not yet. Not until I start making soundtracks. So I see myself as playing on stage, and I'd play with trombones. I play trombone, and I play, with little horn sections. But so I'm trying to just create a really live thing. In fact, for my next album, I'm going to get a 4-string quartet because once again, if I was performing on stage, I wouldn't have an orchestra, but I would like to have a cello and a viola at least, playing. Those are a couple of my favorites. The violin's a little squeaky, like trumpets. I'm not a big trumpet fan, but I love the cornet. So if I was even going to add one more horn to this thing, I wouldn't add a trumpet, I'd add a cornet because I was just my own quirk. So my style. That's what my Scorpion Resurrection Orchestra is going to be. It's going to be trombones with maybe a cornet and then a cello and viola, maybe a couple of each. I don't know. And that's it. I'm going to make a little band, the Scorpion Orchestra, I'm calling it. So that's what I'm creating is the Scorpion Orchestra. So I'm really excited. It's coming along, and I'm getting used to playing the trombones and using how to use the piano and adjust the samples and you get the right sound right and then play it. And, it's very tedious. And then after you record it, you can go back and alter the sounds by assigning key switches to the different sound. You put a different, some of these programs have it so that certain keys on here on the piano will trigger a different type of musical recording response. So I can turn this thing that I played as a staccato thing, a trombone going pop, bump, 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 and I can hit this other key, and all of a sudden I go bump, 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 bump. I can change it. So I can change certain individual notes to long notes and short notes and really make it even sound more realistic. So I'm kind of like, in a way, recording them all. And last thing, I'm not recording. What I'm doing is I'm recording them in various styles. I'll record a couple of trombones in staccato, then a couple of trombones in legato, longer notes, or marcato, with swells on them. You'll notice that when they're swelled. I'm not actually using the volume. If I had a synthesizer, a real MIDI controller, it would have a modulation wheel, and I'd be able to actually adjust the volume. And I can maybe do that by editing it, but I'm not. If you hear the music swell, it's because the original recording of the trombone player is going, he's making it louder. So these are recorded swells. I'm not actually artificially creating them, which is a little nicer, more realistic. But sometimes I don't want the swells. so I might go in there and edit it so it doesn't have the swell, or I'll make them die off, or I'll have to edit them. So it depends on what level I'm going to go to fine tuning this record, but I could go to nitty gritty every single note and really fine tune them if I wanted to, which I kind of do. We'll see. Right now it's just trying to figure it out. I'm just getting through a song from beginning to end, and recording it is, to me, just an amazing thing. And then I'm creating the arrangements, and arranging these horns is a whole new thing. I've never done that before, ever. Even when I was a trombone player as a kid, I was playing pre-made arrangements. They were written out, and I just play my part, and the other parts were written. I had no idea what they were. I wasn't looking at a whole score. I just had my individual part. So when I was working for the jingle writer, I wasn't even doing arrangements for him. I was just mostly running errands for him, and doing final editing and making copies and backups and things like that for him, and doing computer logins and just helping him that. And in the studio, I was just kind of a handyman for him, and just communicating and helping the session players, but I was there for the recording of the sessions. And I loved being there and watching the orchestras. They were from the San Diego Symphony, all the people he was hiring. So I was hearing the best horn players and the best string players in San Diego back in the 70s, and I was helping them record. So, I've got high levels, high standards, that I have to equal. So anyway, that's where I'm at now, is I'm recording an orchestra, and I'm using this new software, Logic Pro, Kontakt. Kontakt. Now, within Logic Pro, I have to, this Kontakt software is what is the interface I need between the digital samples and the Logic Pro. So I had to buy this program, which was like $350, and then this is a lot of money for me. I've been homeless for years, so I'm just spending every penny I can. I got a couple $100 extra a month now, off my Social Security, but that's all gone now with all this extra digital stuff I've got. But anyway, just keep saving. Every couple months I could buy something. So anyway, the Kontakt, you load that in, and so then when I wish I could just show you the screenshots and I could teach you how to use this. But anyway, I have to, on each channel, then I assign that channel. I go to the Kontakt, and then from the Kontakt, I can then open up the samples, which I've loaded into my computer, and it opens up those samples. And then the different sample companies have different interfaces for accessing their samples and altering and EQing them and picking the sample and the types of samples. Like I said, a string plucking or a string playing, single bow. Well, I don't have any strings yet. Well, actually, I kind of do, but I'm not going to use them. When I got that $350 Kontakt program, it included all kinds of great stuff in it. It's like, wow. But I had my heart set on just getting these really specific trombone programs from like Italy and this swing band player who recorded some trombones. And so I had a couple of just specialty things, because to me, I wanted that particular trombone player and that particular trombone player. I wasn't just looking for any generic trombones. And so that's what I've done, is I put together this little orchestra of these particular little programs, two of them for 8Dio from, I think they're in Italy, and 8Dio, and I got their bass trombone program and their tenor trombone program. Well, it's actually called the Soul. They were recorded for mariachi band music or something like that, so they got this recording of this hot, really fire trombone, they called it. So it's kind of spicy. It's not really an orchestra style trombone playing the notes. It's like you've got a little more spice and jump and pep to it, which is what I wanted. So I got those two, and then I got the swing band trombone, tenor trombone pro. I really liked what he did. His sound really great, and his trombone player he recorded is just really awesome. I like him better than the other ones. Then I got over here. The trombone player is more like me. This guy in swing band, he's more like my type of player. But these other guys are different. So I got 3 different trombone players, 3 different recordings, 3 different styles of playing, and so it sounds like 3 different players. And then I can even double them up, which is what I'm doing. I take the bass trombone. Should I tell you how much I mean, this is the way I'm doing it right now. I take the bass trombone, because this is what I was doing on the Kung Fu Cowboy Part 1 album. I would record the bass on one channel, and then the bass on the other channel. And I'd make them kind of the same, but recorded a little differently. And then I would take the bass and I'd play it again, but without any distortion. I'd turn my amp down, because I was recording them out of my amplifier. And I'd turn the amp down and record it cleaner and cleaner. And I had like 4, if you listen to Kill the Spider, it has 4 tracks of trombones on it. And 2 of them are distorted, really just distorted bass guitars, and then 2 of them are clean. So that's what I'm actually doing on this album, is I'm recording 2 trombones with a really staccato. Boop, 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 so you got a little accent. And then I got these other 2 in like mercados there, so they're going, whoa, whoa. And then I put the 2 together on each side, and I kind of try to play them a little differently on each side, but I try to make these 2 match, and these 2 kind of match. And so anyway, and then I record the tenor trombone, and I position them in my mind. I can see them on stage. So I got the bass trombones on each side, and then I've got my swing bass guy over here at like 10 o'clock. And then the 8-Dio fire trombone, I got him over here at 2 o'clock. So I got this like 4-piece trombone section. And then I got me playing guitar and singing in the middle. And I got Tom Calder playing bass over here on this side. So I'm kind of like switching the bass over, making a little separation between me and the bass player. And then I got Rory G on lead guitar way over here, so that he's far away from me, so you can kind of hear the 2 guitars apart. And then I got the drums in the center. And and that's it. And then a couple of special effects I'm putting on the sides, just kind of fill it out a little, Morocco over here, and a Chinese instrument maybe over here, and then that's my Scorpion Orchestra. I'm so excited. So anyway, like I said, I'm recording away here, and see ya. I'll keep you posted. And this is the video podcast, so there may not be any music on this. I'm just going to probably just slap this up there. So find the audio podcast, and I'll slap some music samples on this. This is the Shaolin Records podcast over at Spotify. Anywhere there's podcasts, I think it's already been accepted. This is my 8th one, 008. So I think all the different channels and iTunes have picked it up. So you should be able to find it pretty easily now. So and you'll see. So here's some samples. Well, remember, they're rough. Don't criticize me too much. There's no mixing, there's no EQ, there's no compression, there's no reverb. These are just the rough tracks. That's it. Just straight, with no automation, no volume changes. This is the worst it can possibly sound without doing anything to it. And now from here I can adjust the levels and get the vocals up, because sometimes they get buried and the trombones are too loud. Way too loud on most of the songs. But I wanted to hear them. I'm still kind of experimenting and trying to hear them. So you can hear what I'm doing, and then finally you'll hear my final mixes. And by the time I get them finally mixed, they should be really professionally sounding. Yeah. Shaolin Records. Okay, we're going to make a comeback here. Debuting with Scorpion Resurrection. That's going to be my new style recording. See you later. Shaolin Records out of here.